Welcome everyone to ParaMOOC 2024. I'll move this over so I can tell you what the actual name of the course is. It's Parapsychology Research and Education. It's a series that started in 2015 and was founded by Carlos S. Alvarado, my late husband, and me. And Parapsychology Foundation, who I would like to thank today, Lizette Coley and Anna Damalis have been very generous over that entire time, and they have been financially supporting us as well as morally supporting us, which is all all the verbal hugs we get as we go along really makes a difference. I would also like to thank Brian Williams from the Psychical Research Foundation, who has started out with us in 2015 and took over Carlos's job of being the curriculum director. And he started that in 2023 when we brought it back. We went 2015 to 2020 and then restarted it in 2023. I'd also like to say thank you to Natasha Chisdis of ChisFilm.net, who does a lot of the background administrative stuff. So today, and I forgot, I always like to say thank you to Radiant Skies, who was the artist on 123rf.com. We licensed her Wordle. We just thought it was wonderful, and it bears looking at it really closely because she's got all kinds of marvelous obvious and not so obvious terms that fit with the field. So today we're going to have Dr. Athena Druce. I'm going to talk a little bit about her in a minute. The title of our presentation today is Children's Exceptional Experiences, Exploring Anecdotal Cases and Clinical Ways to Work with Children and Families. Athena has a PsyD, an MA, an MSN, and an RPTS. You can tell me what that is. I'm not sure. She
Registered
is a
play therapist supervisor.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds like such a marvelous job, I must say. So Athena is a licensed child psychologist, does clinical psychology, and is a consultant to the Rhine Research Center and the Parapsychology Foundation on children's psychic experiences. Dr. Druce has had her own psychic experiences as a child through adulthood. She was a research assistant at the Division of Parapsychology and Psychophysics at the Maimonides Hospital in Brooklyn, New York, assisting with dream telepathy experiments. She has published research, journal and magazine articles and reviews on children and psi, and has lectured extensively on the subject. Dr. Druce is the senior author, along with Dr. Sally Ann Drucker, who will be in this course a little later on, of the work Parapsychological Research with Children and Annotated Bibliography, which was brought out by Scarecrow Press in 1991. She is also a national and international presenter and supervisor of play therapy, as well as a chapter author and senior editor of over 13 books on play therapy. And there's more information on the Parapsychology Online website about Dr. Druce. This presentation will focus on various perspectives of anecdotal exceptional experiences reported by children, teens, and parents, such as seeing and interacting with imaginary friends, orbs, spirits, and ghosts. Comparisons will be made between anecdotal cases received from a website devoted to perceptive students' experiences, from Dr. Louisa Rhine's Children's Letters, experiences reported during a children's psychic experiences group, as well as clinical cases. Anecdotal reports will offer rich examples of children and teens' experiences, along with their personal reactions, fears, and concerns from having these experiences. Clinicians will be helped to create a holding space for the child's imaginary world experiences without judgment, which materials to include in the therapy room to encourage disclosure, how to be culturally sensitive to parental beliefs and religious views, and ways to understand and respond to exceptional experiences. Dr. Drew will stress the point that therapists need to be sensitive in responding and not assume such experiences necessarily indicate psychosis. Yes, it's gorgeous.
All right, great. So, as we have heard, I was a consultant to the Rhine Research Center and the PA as well, and have a lot of material that I will be sharing from a lot of these areas, including the anecdotal letters that were received by Louisa Rhine that were in the files down in North Carolina, and from my website, perceptivechildren.org. So how did I get to this point in my life and into this field? Well, around age 5, I started having recurring dreams of past life experiences that I would remember these recurring dreams over and over, and had 2 very vivid memories of being an adult male in these lives, and bits and pieces about them as to why maybe in this life it would be important to be dealing with some of this material. But at age 10 was really the turning point for me. I was reading a book, Ben-Hur, and my family was going to see the movie, kind of dates me way back when that movie came out. And I only had maybe 5 or 6 pages left. And my mother kept saying, turn out the light, go to sleep, go to sleep. And I said, I have 5 more pages. I want to finish the book. And she sent my brother in, who turned out the light. And I was furious. I went to bed remembering how angry I felt. Well, that night I dreamt of having, I was in sort of outside of myself, looking down on events that were happening of a family car accident, that the family was in a car accident. I saw my mother being wheeled out in what I didn't know was a gurney. It was a wheeled stretcher. I knew she was hurt. I saw my younger of 2 brothers, who was older than me, sitting in a wheelchair, but I knew he wasn't hurt in the dream. But it was a very, very vivid dream and vivid memory when I woke up, unlike other dreams. And I found out since, with my dreams, a precognitive dream has a very different feel to it, a different substance to it than just a regular dream that just dissipates in the morning. It stayed with me for many years in vivid memory. Well, about 2 weeks later, we were going to the movie, and sure enough, coming back, we were in the car accident, in the exact duplication of those scenes, to the point where in the hospital, I said to my father, I said, I dreamt that just 2 weeks ago. And he looked at me very seriously and said, don't ever tell anyone. He didn't explain himself, but it got me thinking, like, are people going to think I'm a witch? Was this bad? How can dreams come true? Did I make it happen because I was angry? And that led to a kind of a lifelong search for information. And at 18, happened upon an article about the dream lab at Maimonides Medical Center. And I called them up and I said, I'd like to come down and see what's going on. And they said, sure, come on down. We're doing an experiment Friday night, and came on down and wound up staying the whole night and being a research assistant and doing the dream telepathy experiments with them, and stayed with them. Met Sally Drucker there, Stanley Krippner, Charles Honorton, just wonderful people, wonderful work, and felt I had come home, kindred spirits, and decided, I wanted to do work with children because that was the field I was in. And as a therapist, child therapist, and Sally and I collaborated. Well, those psychic abilities have evolved over the years. They still are with me. I still have psychic experiences, precognitive, clairvoyant, seeing animal spirits because I don't want to see human spirits, people spirits. I don't want to turn around and see someone standing there, but I do see the spirits of animals. I did have an encounter with an angel, clairaudience, clairsentience. Found that some of those abilities waned around early teens. Almost you didn't want to have them. And we'll talk about some of these teens' responses and reactions. because you don't get a favorable response necessarily when you share these events, and usually you don't. And then the events, the experiences came back very strong in late teen years and throughout, as I said, even to this day. So for about 50 years, I've been a child therapist, clinical therapist, and working with kids using play therapy, specialized form of therapy. And a lot of the clients would come in and share some of their experiences or allude to them, about their grandmother having passed away, and that at bedtime they see them or hear something. And so the two worlds were always separate, my clinical work from my parapsychology work. But over the last, say, 10 years, I've merged them because a lot of therapists have come to me asking for help on what do I do with this? Do I refer them to a psychiatrist? How do I deal with this? How do I respond to this? So I'm happy that it's coming out more in the clinical work, and I see more writing that I'll be doing in this way of it. So this presentation is kind of a broad-based. It's going to cover Louisa Rhine's children's letters that I did publish in the Journal of Parapsychology, the Psychic Experience Group, the PEG, that Rhine Research Center created for a period of time, and my adult group is still going. And then a sample from my website, perceptivechildren.org, that I have as an informational website for children and parents. We'll also look at clinical issues, stressing imaginary playmates versus spirit contact, and how to help identify that and also work with children on that. Also, the difference between seeing spirits and possible psychosis. And certainly there's a need for a lot more writings on this. But most importantly, how do children and teens feel about these experiences and sharing them and the responses that they get? And how do they handle that? And then looking at the clinical ways, if you are a clinician, how can you bring this up in therapy if you're working with children? What ways you can normalize it, maybe some materials that you can use in your sessions in your room to help facilitate and encourage responding or sharing of experiences, and how to work with parents and helping them understand it. So generally, anecdotal experiences, I experience exceptional. We've called it a lot of different things over the years. So now it's sort of ExEs. But the interesting fact Louisa Rhine wrote back in 1961 is that that emerges from studying children's experiences is that their experiences, though simpler, still are similar, both in form and type, to those of adults. So there's great benefit in looking at it. This is a comment that I received email on my website of the need for sharing experiences and having a venue, that this particular person was looking for information regarding psychic children, and they had a hard time finding anything or anyone to talk to that related to their son's gifts. It would be nice to find other kids that he can talk to and relate to. He's 9 years old and has several gifts, and new ones pop up frequently. He remembers his past lives, sees things happen before they do, sees auras, cannot hold metal or batteries too long because they burn his hand, sees spirits, can communicate with spirits, aliens, animals, is beginning to learn to heal by direction of his spirit guides. If you can assist or point me in the right direction to find someone to help us, I'd appreciate it. So a lot of the emails are very similar to this, seeking help, wanting validation, wanting support. And I've been building also a network of therapists around the nation that are open and willing to work with kids and help support their efforts if they're having some distress around their experiences. So the big thing is that a child or teen who has these abilities is not odd or weird. And unfortunately, society still has a bit of a stigma related to that. Still, and I think even in recent years, we're finding a lot more pushback and negative responses, at least in the United States. So I also help parents try to understand that they shouldn't be treated differently because of a talent that they have. It's like, a prodigy in art or music or baseball, but they're just like any other child. The problem is that psychic experiences just can't be ignored. They're often very pronounced, they're very persistent, they sort of stay with you or can be disturbing. So, and then they may have other sensitivities as well in terms of sound, touch, you know, just their environment, picking up what's going on around them. So helping parents understand that they're not weird. They're pretty normal kids, and most of them are pretty normal kids, but they have a special gift or talent that needs to be encouraged, nurtured, responded to, validated. So a good reason for and resource for analyzing these spontaneous and anecdotal information is really to help offer validation to also to those that experience them. There are researchers that you probably know of, Tucker and Stevenson, with a lot of past life reports of children, Morse Moody doing children and adults near-death experiences, and Louisa Rhine having a collection of thousands of letters of adults, everyday people having their experiences that wrote in and shared their reports, including a handful of teens and children. So a lot of material is there. As I mentioned, also the Psychic Experience Group that the Rhine Research Center created, and the website is where we're going to get a lot of this stuff from. With Louisa Rhine's letters, it just happened, and when Sally and I were going through a lot of trying to help organize a lot of these letters many years ago, came across kind of a treasure trove of children's letters that had never been addressed or looked at. And there was 216 of them that were between that 1961 and 1971 era that came from the United States and Canada, from articles that Louisa and J.B. Rhine wrote in various magazines and Reader's Digest that were sort of out to the everyday person and had access. So they started writing, and these teens and kids wrote to her. And it was about ages 10 to 18, with the mean age of 14. And most of the letter writers, not surprisingly in some ways, were from women, from females, from girls, teens about it. But there were boys and that were also writing in about their experiences. Most of the letters, about 31%, a good third of them, had general questions. They want to know about careers. They wanted to know, what is parapsychology? What about the Ouija board? Can they use it? Did they believe in that? But they're out of that group, 148 letters. So quite a lot of them had experiences that could be categorized and analyzed. The majority, 52%, were precognitive dreams. Then you would say waking impressions, precognitive intuitions, a good quarter of them, clairvoyant experiences, telepathic experiences, and then some miscellaneous ones, an out-of-body one, seeing discarnate spirits of individuals they didn't know. The precognitive experiences that they reported were interesting because they were mostly of trivial events. A good, more than half, about clothing that they were going to see someone wearing the next day, or grades and exams that they had, maybe gifts or a breakup, in a romance. a song that was going to come on the radio or going on a particular trip. And it's interesting in the adult letter analysis that was done by Schouten, it was quite the opposite. 10% were trivial. Most were, a good majority was about death of someone in their life, or concerns about escaping a situation that could have led to death, about serious injury that was going to occur to themselves or others, or even a slight injury. So the focus, if you add that up, almost 75%, 70%, had to do with more of a personal concern, safety, and worry, which would fit with adults. That would be what we worry about, what we think about, especially as we're getting older, as opposed to teens and younger, children. Their world is not going to be about any of that. It's going to be more about the present day, about the everyday trivial kinds of concerns, the drama that goes on in their life. And so it was interesting to see the difference that they had in where the experience fell. There was also many more, twice as many precognitive dreams, as opposed to intuitive waking experiences, as you can see. So, that's worth looking into to see if that still holds up to today with children and what their means of getting information for experiences. So Susan, who's 11, wrote into Louisa Rhine, right before Christmas, my mother and I stopped in at a friend's to see how their sick baby was. The baby, about 16 months old, was in a steam tent in his room. I was told not to go near him. When my mother came out, I asked her if the baby would die before 1961. My mother told me not to say such things. Then, about 3:30 a.m., December 23, 1960, I awoke. I heard a baby cry and then choke. Sure enough, the baby had died that night at 3:30. So you can imagine a child telling this to a parent and what kind of response they're going to have. And the fact that it comes true, whether or not, again, was this something pre-told, or is this something the child's going to feel guilty about, as I did for a long time? Gee, could you have caused it or wished it or in some way made it happen? The Psychic Experiences group, the PEG, was founded by myself in January 2011. And that's about the time in 2010, 2011 that the Rhine Research Center thought it would be a good idea to start forming groups that adults could go to and share their experiences. And we would occasionally have meetings to talk about that. There might have been 10, maybe 15 the most, across the country. And we'd share experiences on how that's working, what kinds of things come up, what issues there were. And the group met once a week. And believe it or not, it is still going on to this day. So I'm very proud to say 13 years later, my PEG group, even though I moved away from New York 8 years ago, continues to meet every Wednesday with about 10 to 15 people sharing their experiences and finding that they have a place to voice them, to have kindred spirits, to have a place that you feel validated, you feel heard and not criticized or thought that you're weird. Even as an adult, those feelings and experiences are still there for kids, but that feeling still stays even with adults. So there'd be a little article in the local newspaper saying about where the group was going to meet, and that it's a place where people can safely share their psychic experiences and feel supported. And I would have my phone number and email. So I decided to set up kind of gather some research, and created this survey form asking newcomers and participants to share what age they first remembered their experiences, what types of experiences did they have, and then I could use that information to sort of put together some research. So There were 40 attendees that filled this format over a period of a few months. And the range of participants that attended were 35 to 85 years of age, with the average around 51.5 years of males and 60 years of age for females. And it was very pleasing to see that there were a lot of men that would come to this group on a regular basis to share their experiences, that they didn't feel embarrassed or self-conscious to share what had been going on. And many had held in these experiences for a lifetime and had no place to share it or anyone to tell. A good majority of these experiences that they've had now, as well as in the past, started between the ages of 2 and 18, most around 14 years of age, around puberty. And I always wonder too, and I really don't have research on this, but around puberty, where there's a lot of emotional turmoil and shifts and changes in the hormone levels, whether or not that helps to sort of open the door, so to speak, to the abilities to, or become more aware of their own abilities. This is kind of true for a lot of the spontaneous, the RSPK events, recurrent spontaneous PK events that would be caused by teens that were reported and researched, that it had a lot to do with the sort of puberty and emotional turmoil that the teen was going through. And then when that was resolved, those RSPK events would stop. So here's kind of a little bit of a listing of what occurred and sort of where the various experiences fell, and a chart of it. You can see a good majority of them were with apparitions, as well as waking precognitive experiences and psychic dreams as well. So 65% of the people that were coming to the PEG group responded that they had seen spirits or apparitions in their home or even elsewhere in other places that they would go to that might have been known or not known to have some spirit contacts or events. 62% had precognitive dreams. Close in running, 58% would have precognitive kind of waking, intuitive visions of family, friends, or personal events. Then 45% with telepathic events occurring among friends or family. 40% reported UFO sightings. And interestingly enough, in the Mid-Hudson area that I lived in, there was a lot of activity being reported in one of the towns to the west of us of sightings. So it could have been a hotbed of energy, or maybe actually events occurring. So people were coming to share some of that. 38 had psychic healing, either finding that they were able to use Reiki or other means, laying of hands and helping heal others, or receiving it and having it from someone else that was transformative. 35% out-of-body experiences, often with clairaudience or clairsentience as well during that time. 35% reincarnation memories, and 30% seeing or photographing orbs. So they would take a picture, there'd be nothing evident, but when they looked at the picture later, or developed the film at the time that there were cameras that we had filmed with, they would see orbs in the background. Now, I also ran a psychic experience group for children, and a lot of this breakdown, although less so the UFOs, were similar to the children's experiences, that they would come and report a lot of this, and found the group very helpful to have peers, friends that they could make, friendships to share their experiences. So these PEG groups, I don't believe that they exist anymore, which is a shame. And perhaps Ryan would think of, reinstituting that or encouraging that. course, it's an article that needs to be written down the road by myself, probably to help bring awareness, but it's a wonderful way to get anecdotal material, spontaneous cases, as well as support the people who are attending that need the venue to share and find a place to understand, get more information, but to also just feel like I don't have to be ashamed, scared, embarrassed about these experiences. So here are some of the comments that I would receive. It is a safe and comfortable place. I can share experiences and not be scoffed at, where others, even family, wouldn't accept them. It feels like you are a family to me. Or you grow here. Hearing experiences helps my own abilities to grow stronger. It re-energizes me when I come here. So Jeannie Palmer and Broad wrote about exceptional human experiences, and they also reported that there are beneficial effects and benefits of connecting the person on a deeper level, more intimate level, to the self and others and life in general through the sharing of experiences. And that those sharing and those experiences as well contribute to spiritual growth and well-being. And those experiences that were reported that they had collected and researched were seen as positive and transformative experiences for themselves. And a good majority had frequent childhood experiences between 2 and 14 years of age, with dreaming, again, precognitive dreams, being the most common. So in my website, which is still exists and has been running for quite a long time, I'd say probably 20 years at least, it's an informational website so that people can get information about their exceptional experiences, articles. There's also a Facebook page. So most of the responses that I'm going to summarize came through the internet, through emails. People would respond through the website and have a place that they have contact information that they can contact me. And I would receive on the average 2 to 3 emails a week. And so this is kind of a summary of about 150 emails. I have probably 10 times that amount in my files that I'm now trying to categorize, summarize, and maybe do some research on it, statistics on it, again, for a future article. A lot of the responders would be from around the world: South Africa, Romania, Canada, throughout the US, Texas, Kentucky, Virginia, Illinois, New York. So this is a 1-year period with the 150 emails that I received. The mean age is about 8 years of age, with 90% of those that were contacting me being female. They were mothers, they were grandmothers, they were aunts writing about their children or their grandchildren or relatives. 10%, though, were fathers, grandfathers who wanted to also get information about their own children. And 6% were teenagers, both males and females. So the experiencers that they were writing about, or the experiences, were about infants under the age of 2 on up to adolescents. Again, mean age about 8.8 years, which was younger than the mean age of 14. And Palmer and Browd's survey ages as well. The largest group were between 6 and 10 years of age. So 68%, almost 69% were of female children, about girls, and 31% were about boys, with 10% of the parents reporting that they personally had experiences or a family member did of a same or very similar psychic ability or experience when they were younger, as they're seeking information about the current child or relative. Another email I received, my family thought I was strange and even a bit crazy. They were not truly supportive and even laughed at me. I know I am not a freak, and my psychic experiences have often been helpful to me in many ways. But I don't want my daughter to suffer what I went through or feel desperate and confused because adults or her peers do not believe her and tease her. Another is a 15-year-old, Caitlin, who said, I am a sensitive psychic and empath. At the age of 9, I was in a car crash, thus giving me my abilities. At the time, I was living in Tennessee and later moved to California, where my abilities intensified. For 2 years, I continued to lie to myself and tell myself each night it was my imagination, but then later realizing that I was, well, different. I never told my parents because I was so scared of being rejected from the family. I told the only person I thought I could trust, my grandma. She helped me get through it. Due to a premonition in January that had to do with my dad's friend, I knew that I had to tell them, and I did. They want to help, but there isn't much they can do. I'm living my life in fear due to the horrifying things I see. They are everywhere, my room, parks, my friends, houses. I am most terrified by shadow people. I've been reading a lot on barriers and white light, but nothing has kept me safe. The only things keeping me from harm are my spirit animals. I know they can't protect me forever, so I need help. I need to know how to protect myself and live a happy life. I have looked all over for someone to help me. My mother recommended you to me, and hopefully you can help me save my life from the dark. I would like to turn my life upside down and live it without worrying about anything. If you can help me, I would be so grateful. So a lot of the experiencers, and we'll get more into that, have that feeling of fear, anxiety, being bombarded, being overwhelmed by the spirit contact or the apparitions they're seeing, and unclear how to stop it, how to put a limit on it, how not to have it overwhelm their daily existence or trying to read or study in school. So there were lots of experiences reported. Some writers would list 2 or 3 different types of psi experiences of their child. So it wasn't just uniquely one per person. So it totaled about 171 exceptional experiences that were reported. Top of the list, seeing or hearing spirits, seeing orbs that they believed to be some kind of a spirit contact, clairvoyance, telepathy, out of body, seeing auras, seeing an animal totem, and past life memories. Here's one example of an email. My son often starts his sentences using the past tense, such as when I used to be or before I died, and talks much about before he was born and how he died and about his mom and dad. These parents are from a previous time. He says they are his other mom and dad. Or my own son, I happened to come up the stairs and he was intently playing in his room, and he turned around to me and says, you know, Mom, at the age of 5, we keep coming back. We come back until we get to the 7th level, and then we don't need to come back anymore. And I was flabbergasted because he had never spoken about past life memories or reincarnation. And I wound up looking it up in terms of Buddhism's belief that indeed there are 7 levels that the soul reportedly, I feel, does go through before it can decide not to be reincarnated again. So children are sensitive to that and are able to have memories. And this, a lot of the responders were sharing that. Now, what I found interesting with this website and the responses were that there was a much lower telepathy report, that people were not sharing a lot of experiences about telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, in comparison to the Rhine letters, the children's letters. And I started to kind of speculate, well, why was that? How is it that that's not coming up? Well, this phenomena, telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, is kind of out there in the public. It's a conversation, it's a terminology people use a lot. Oh, I'm telepathic. Oh, you read my mind. So it's not unusual. It doesn't seem to be out of the norm or exceptional anymore. It's in the everyday language. You have TV and movie superheroes having these abilities quite readily. So it's sort of, yeah, that's a given. It's sort of expected. And perhaps now there's a less of a stigma around that area, that if somebody says that they are a psychic or have abilities that are telepathic or clairvoyant, it's not so bizarre or unusual at this point. So we're not getting as many reports. But what is coming up, and seems to be at least this point in time, are reports and sharing about spirit contact. And that's also been out in the media. There was Paranormal State and Ghost Whisperer and Medium TV shows that highlighted that and sort of reinforced that. But what's happening now and what I'm seeing now is more of a backlash, more of a stigma coming through in some areas, in some parts of the country, as well as perhaps religious-wise, or just in the way the world is right now, going against people who see this or report this. So in the spontaneous cases that were reported through my website, 69% reported that they had some kind of contact with a discarnate spirit or ghost entity. 20%, though, only were relatives or people that they might have known. Most of them, 3/4 of them, were stranger contact. They had no idea who these people were, why they were getting this information or being approached. And often it was kind of shadowy human shapes. They were fully clothed. It could be period dress or could be contemporary dress. And many of the people reported also hearing things, that they were being spoken to. This 5-year-old that is being reported in the email, several members of my family are convinced, as I am, that my granddaughter, Selena, is a medium. She has been telling us specific details about specific individuals who are her friends, quote unquote, concerning their deaths. We have watched her babble and laugh with them since her birth. She comforts others when they talk about people they love who have passed away, and makes it clear to them they should not feel sadness. And she herself is actually cheerful about it. She has told us information about past loved ones, which passed before her birth. We are concerned about her because she is in kindergarten this year, and although it is a wonderful gift, it is interfering with her sleep and her schoolwork. We are at a loss to help her. And often at age 5, when kids enter school, they, are sharing it openly with their family and maybe family friends. And now they have friends in school and they start to talk about it, or with their teachers. And often they may get a negative response. That teacher may want to report them to a therapist or a psychiatrist because they think they're hallucinating. And so sometimes these kids will stop talking about their experiences. Sometimes they diminish and they don't want to have them. They don't want to know about them. So it may go underground for a while they're in school. So it's a transitional period that can be very rocky for a lot of kids, navigating as to, what do I do with this information and this ability that I have, where people are not accepting them. Frank reports this experience. I have seen a ghost in my bedroom. It is about 5 feet 4 inches and has a very high woman's voice. However, it only comes out when I'm alone. I can't figure this out. This one was just white and I could see through it. I am the only one who's seen this ghost. And for a lot of kids, a lot of people, they would report that when it's dark out, or at bedtime, especially when they're trying to go to sleep, that's when they get inundated with seeing spirits or having that kind of apparition show up or discarnate figure appearing in their room. And, I always help the kids and parents understand, it's like the stars in the sky. During the day, we don't see them because the light is out, the sun is out, it's bright. And so those stars in the sky, the night sky is hidden from us. But at nighttime, when the sun goes down, you're able to see the stars. Well, it's very true of the apparitions. They're there all the time, but the sensitivity to it might be more intense and more apparent at nighttime when it's dark and they can be seen more or their presence made known. So, a lot of my work has been helping kids on how do you set limits on them when they enter your room or they're bothering you during the day or at nighttime, because it is distressing. They can't concentrate, they can't sleep. This parent reported, I have a 3-year-old daughter that is scaring me to death. We just moved into a new house about 3 weeks ago, and it is upstairs and downstairs. Her room is downstairs, and she has always been a good sleeper. But ever since about the 3rd day we've lived here, she has been staying up for hours and hours talking about a man in her room. At first, I thought maybe it was something she was just making up, perhaps saw on TV. Then she started speaking of a little boy that was bleeding in his head, and she was saying the little boy was angry because he couldn't find his parents, and he was stuck in the house. When I asked her what happened to him, she said a car hit him. Then a few days later, we were talking to our neighbor, and he told us there was a 13-year-old boy that lived here 7 years prior who was killed by a car as he was pulling out of the driveway on his dirt bike. We had no previous knowledge of this, and neither did my daughter. Now, interestingly, could there be a developmental progression towards seeing spirits? A lot of young children would report seeing orbs, or there would be pictures of orbs with them. And if the parent took a picture of them, they'd see orbs or in the pictures. And it seems from the reports that I've been getting that younger children see orbs, these bright sort of bubbles, bright light, not necessarily with anything in it. Sometimes they might see what looks like a shape or maybe something in the bubble, but it's this sort of radiant orb. And then around 8 to 9 years of age, the reports I've been getting seem to be of wisps of smoke like people. They're not well formed, shadows, silhouettes. And then preteens or teens, more so seeing human figures. And as kids get older, seeing that, going that progression, seeing more of an actual figure with a shape, with face, with clothing, fully developed. So I raise this as an area for future research for those who do get spontaneous cases, to check into that. And I'm going to be looking more at the emails that I've received to see if there's any way I can get some research, some data on this. Here's an example. I am a mother of a 3-year-old girl who has recently begun seeing an orb of light that she says is a ghost. This light is only seen by her and only in one room in our house. As an infant, she would smile and coo every time she was in a position to see the upstairs landing in our old house. She would laugh and laugh as she looked up there. Then as she got a little older, several times before I put her in her crib, she would have to wave and say goodnight to something or someone on the ceiling. She would follow them with her eyes. I would like some guidance, or at least a suggestion of where to turn to figure out what we are dealing with here, if anything. And another one, again, a lot of younger kids. This is another 3-year-old. For 3 years now, well, actually, no, he's older. But for 3 years, he's been saying that he sees a ghost. He says it's like they are human, but very misty and white. He can describe their clothes, etc. He sees them at home and outside. He sleeps in my bed and refuses to be alone. He has even seen his hamster running around his bedroom floor that has passed away weeks earlier. He hates the dark, and he doesn't like talking about it. We are seeing a counselor person so he can talk to her about his feelings, as they are thinking he has anxiety, but I think different. I've seen him go white and scared and cries when he sees one. I'm trying. I know my son is not crazy. I just wish I could help him. And then this one, my brother is 16 years old, and for the past 2 years or so, he has been seeing people in the house. He's not the type of person to make up stories like this. I know he's not just trying to get attention. At first, he saw only shadows. Then the shadows became outlines of people. And now he sees features and thinks that they are trying to say something to him. He hasn't heard anything back yet. So this now, and if you have questions, I realize we're kind of going almost an hour, but if people do have questions, we can always pause, or they could write it in. I think there's a way to do that, and I can respond, but we'll have some time at the end. So I'd like to switch a little here to imaginary playmates, because sometimes that's a precursor to seeing spirits, or they are actually seeing spirits. So I love this quote, and a child's imaginary playmate just might actually be there. Marjorie Taylor has done some work on imaginary companions and has this book about the children who create them. And I'll reference her as well. Here is one email that I received. My name is Michael, and I'm writing you because I have heard of your work with psychic children. I myself have had experiences that I and others may believe to be of a psychic nature since I was a young boy, and have tried desperately over the years to understand and come to terms with these experiences. I was born 3 months premature and am in a wheelchair. As a child, I would see things other people didn't. My mother, like most people, would tell of what I saw, thought I had a vivid, overactive imagination. As I got older, my mother noticed these imaginary friends matched the description of people who had passed on. Such was the case of my father's ex-boss's wife. It wasn't until after I saw her that I learned who she was prior, that she had passed on and was very fond of the house we lived in. I began trying to accept this gift and understand. However, as I became more and more open, I was met by ridicule and looked at as different. I am contacting you in hope of understanding and developing this gift if I do indeed possess it. So individuals having these imaginary playmates, autistic kids reporting as well, seeing spirits or having psychic experiences seem to be becoming more prevalent. So imaginary playmates started the interest that psychologists devoted to this back in the early 19th century, but they thought that it could be an emotional instability or some kind of psychological problem in children. Psychodynamic traditions saw imaginary playmates as a defense mechanism. And actually, they're quite the opposite. Imaginary playmates are a sign of positive developmental progress and quite a normal phenomena. What we mean by imaginary companion or playmate was originally defined as an invisible character named and referred to in conversation with other persons or played with directly for a period of time, at least several months, having an air of reality for the child, but no apparent objective basis. This excludes the type of imaginary play where an object is personified or in which the child takes on the role of a character. This is way back in 1934. So an invisible friend was regarded as an invisible companion. And you could see cartoons that feature that. Imaginary friends are common, so there's a high frequency. Most people either know someone who had an imaginary playmate as a child or had one themselves. The first studies way back in 1946 had 13 to 31% of children having imaginary companions. Taylor's research shows 65%, a much larger prevalence of imaginary playmates or companions. Harris also found categories where the child invents a creature or a person and interacts with it. So there's no prop, and you see them talking as though the person's right next to them. The child invents the creature or person and projects it onto a doll or toy. Or the child acts out or impersonates the imaginary characters, such as in role play a monster or a fireman or their Batman. So pretend friends or object friends are dolls or toys that the child may see as real. And there's been some research that when the child animates the stuffed animal or doll with a humankind characteristic, anthropomorphizes it, this to be an imaginary companion. A lot of times it's called an object friend. But most researchers consider imaginary humans, animals, spirits, creatures as imaginary playmates. So that's the more recent research on that. But a lot of us remember Calvin and Hobbes, a stuffed tiger that became animated and real. And he responded to and played with and spoke to his tiger friend, blamed his tiger friend, the father coming in, what's all this noise? You're supposed to be asleep. And he's blaming his friend Hobbes. He was jumping on the bed, and the father says, he was not jumping on the bed. Now go to sleep. And Calvin turns to Hobbes and says, you were too jumping on the bed. And the what might appear to be a stuffed animal is animated and responding and saying, no, you were playing the cymbals and making the noise. So sources of imaginary playmates or imaginary companions, Taylor found in her research, came from television or movie characters, superheroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, stories and books, real people that were living or deceased, ghosts, angels, sometimes real people that are older, characters that they developed, animals. It's very diverse, very unique in what they would have created as their imaginary playmates. In 1969, Charles Schaefer, who's also a renowned play therapist, has since passed, asked 800 high school students, as a child, did you ever have an imaginary companion, such as friends or animals? And 18% of the students said yes, that they did have an imaginary companion. So if we ask the question, we may find a lot more information. So why do kids have them? Why do they exist? Well, some relieve loneliness, which is the most common reason. So they have a playmate. They may be firstborn and the only child. They can have someone that can unconditionally accept them, reassure them. There are lots of flexibility with that. They can blame someone for the bad behavior or mischief that perhaps they have caused or that happens, explore negative aspects of a relationship, deal with social anxiety, counter helplessness, creating an imaginary world that they have control over. And again, each imaginary fantasy friend's very unique to the creator. Usually the ages of 3 to 5, children will start inventing imaginary friends, but it's come in from around the world, not just in the United States, but Kenya, Japan, Nepal, and not just typically developing children. As I mentioned, Down syndrome, autism also have fantasy friends. So youngsters who make fantasy friends tend to be more socially aware than children who don't have an imaginary playmate. And they can put themselves in other people's shoes better than peers who have not had that experience with an imaginary friend. And they also get to see things differently than peers do, which can help them in social situations. So there's positive aspects to imaginary playmates. you know, serving ego functioning and supporting, being listened to, projecting ego ideals, soothing their loneliness. And they tend, those children that have imaginary friends tend to focus more on the minds of others than their looks. They talk about the personalities of others rather than visual cues when they describe real friends, and have a better understanding of themselves. So you're seeing a very heightened sort of emotional, cognitive personality of these children, which can lead and lend themselves to having psychic experiences and being more aware and in tune to their psychic ability or side, and having these exceptional experiences. So they're much more creative, and it's a little unclear, do these imaginary friends cause creativity, or are the children generally more creative and socially aware, or more likely to have imaginary friends? Girls tend to focus their play behavior more on playing house and nurturance and caretaking with their imaginary friends. They tend to have more than one, and these are less competent than them. Boys in their pretend play with imaginary playmates are more action and fantasy oriented, being powerful, more competent than them, but they have more non-human companions, and both tend to have the same gender imaginary playmate companion, although girls will have more opposite gender. Interestingly enough, these imaginary friends can continue through into adolescence and even adulthood. And adolescents who have imaginary friends have a more positive adjustment and coping skills than those that didn't. And adults also, while rare, can use that in their work. Authors having characters do things that they didn't expect when they were writing the characters' own stories. For instance, Ben Hogan, a famous golfer, had an imaginary companion who sat on his shoulder and made fun of the way he played golf. Or Princess Margaret blamed her imaginary companion, cousin Halifax, when she got caught doing something wrong. Or author Enid Blyton said, sometimes a character in my mind makes a joke, a really funny one that makes me laugh as I type it on the paper. And I think, well, I couldn't have thought of that in 100 years. And then I think, well, who did think of it then? So again, the line between it being just strictly an imaginary playmate or possibly a spirit contact or entity gets a little blurry on that. This mom responding, my 5-year-old is almost in tears because her imaginary friend is being mean to her. They don't cover this in the manual. Today, I asked my 3-year-old daughter what her imaginary friend's name was, and she said her name is not important. So I got down real close, looked my daughter dead in the eyes, and whispered, it's important if she's going to be living here. So helping parents understand that these imaginary companions are common and harmless. They usually fade between 6 to 8 years of age, to accept and join in with it. You know, having the friend join them for dinner, set a table at a place at the table for them. Oftentimes, those that are sensitive to their children's imaginary friends can describe their play much more accurately and better than those who are not in tune with the children's behaviors. But they may not always be aware that the child has an imaginary friend. They may use common names that sound like a real child. The details may change over time or be forgotten. The child may be secretive if they sense any kind of disapproval or view pretending as lying. So most parents start to get worried about their children's imaginary companion when those are getting older. They're older children and it hasn't faded if it's reported past the age of 5 years. or if that imaginary companion's age is older than the child. 50 to 65% of school children report one or more imaginary companion. This is a 2005 research study by Hoff. And Marjorie Taylor, in her book, reported when her daughter was 3, her daughter would refer to a person named Michael Rose that she enjoyed her time playing with, and the mother got curious and asked the preschool teachers to point him out. Well, they had no idea whom she was talking about. And she quotes, she said, when she subsequently pressed her daughter for details, she learned, among other things, that Michael Rose had a barn full of giraffes. At that point, she figured out that Michael Rose only lived in her imagination. So indeed, it can well be that they are imaginary, but here's an email. My 11-year-old daughter told me yesterday that she can hear voices and sometimes see faces. My daughter is bilingual, Japanese, English, and says both languages come to her. I've heard her talking to herself over the years and dismissed it to imaginary play. When she was a baby to about 5 years old, I knew she could see things but thought she outgrew it. She's kept this as a secret until I asked her yesterday who she was talking to. She seemed relieved in a way to open up to me. My concern is to make her feel safe, secure, and comfortable to come to us at any time. I would like to find her a professional that she can share with, and perhaps we can get more insight. We live in Southern California and looking for a referral. And of course, children can wind up blaming their imaginary playmate. And so this boy's in a corner in the cartoon, my imaginary playmate squealed on me. So sometimes those imaginary friends are mean. They don't play nicely. They don't share the toys. They may say mean things to the child. Morrow and research found 34% of the children with imaginary companions sometimes said they were angry with them. They put yogurt in my hair or hit me on the head or won't share. Some don't show up when they want them to or are annoying because they won't go away. So, if in terms of negative acts of imaginary friends, the child asks for chocolate for the friend, you can break it in half and have the child share with the imaginary companion, or they blame the friend for dumping all the popcorn out. The parent can encourage the child to help that imaginary friend clean up, and not to assume the child's lying when they're blaming the imaginary playmate for some mistake. Rather listening to what the child's saying about the friend, troubleshoot the problem together with the child. And while the friends might not seem positive, they are helping the child understand their social world in the same way as imaginary friends that play nicely with them. Lots of books out there. So as a clinician, with parents coming into therapy or the child sharing imaginary friends, again, to think carefully, it can be very normal. It can be an absolute just imaginary friend that they have invented for a variety of reasons, but it can also be a lead-in or a way of exploring whether these might be a spirit or apparitions or some child spirit that they're playing with, and not in fact just purely in something in their imagination. So as an imaginary companion, adult or child needs to conceptualize a ghost as a figment of their imagination, their imaginary friends are under their control. They may believe it's real or have a life of their own. It may be invisible, but not imaginary. In essence, what I'm again saying is that those imaginary companions may not just be a figment of their imagination. And most kids do know the difference between imaginary friends, between a fantasy and a reality, between the imaginary playmate and when it can be real, when it could be a spirit guide, an angel, a ghost. a deceased relative. I see somebody had a comment for him. Okay. All right. So Nan, so yes. So if anyone's at any point has a question or a comment, let me know. We'll try to address that. So this kind of leads us like, okay, are these hallucinations that kids are seeing of spirits? Is it increasing? There's 2011 research that was conducted by Maria Almeida and Cardina, where psychotic experiences are becoming more prevalent in the general population. But 90% of these experiences are not really psychotic disorders. Cost in 1980 with spiritists in Puerto Rico found that seeing spirits occurred in childhood. Uh-oh, why is this somehow okay, my PowerPoint just locked. Okay. Okay, there we go. So Mills found in India that children would talk about invisible rather than imaginary companions. Their communicating was very real, with a real being who existed on a spiritual plane or realm like Shiva, or religious figures, or part of the child's past life. So the parental concerns and fears are that the child might become classified as psychotic and hallucinating, be hospitalized or put on medication if they are admitting that these imaginary playmates or characters or companions are actually spirits and that they're talking to them. They have fear of seeking out support or help, and the child's normal in every other way, behaviorally, emotionally, academically. Here's an example of one of the emails. My 7-year-old daughter has recently started to speak to me about hearing people talking in her head. She says that most of the time it's different voices and she doesn't recognize them. They say 1 or 2 words. There's nothing in her behavior that would suggest any schizophrenic tendencies. Although I actually saw many apparitions as a child, I'm wondering how usual it is for a child to hear things of this nature. Have you had accounts from many children or parents about their children? I'm still in the early stages of talking to my daughter about this. I'm uncertain what to listen for in her accounts. And she tells me that this has been happening since she was little, but she never mentioned it before because she didn't understand what it was. Another one about having questions where they might go, trying to help understand what might be going on. My doctor has referred her to a psychiatrist who is concerned that she may have an early onset of schizophrenia. Not only do I hope and pray that she is wrong, but I'm very concerned that if she is actually gifted, the pursuit of a mental illness diagnosis could be very damaging. Similarly, I feel that if in fact she is ill, that being in denial of it could be also be terribly damaging. I assume that medical doctors would be completely unwilling to consider any phenomena possibility. So that becomes a very real dilemma for parents, even for the kids, to share seeing things that are of exceptional experiences or another realm for fear that they're going to be labeled, diagnosed, hospitalized, put on medication for something that is not necessary. But then on the other hand, at what point could it be something that is psychotic, that is worthy of a mental health referral? For instance, this email, the thing that scares me most is that she says, he will hurt her. I never believed in spirits or anything before, but she's only 3, and how else would she know that me and my father are very strict about what she talks about? And the child will be talking, and she'll say it's a boy ghost, and she's terrified to sleep alone and scared. So having distress about what's being experienced, the intensity, the self-harm or harm of others are red flags that this is not an exceptional experience. A radical change in the child's personality or mood, emotional outbursts, increased difficulty in school, perhaps with hygiene, poor hygiene, more suspiciousness or mistrust, problems with concentrating or withdrawal from friends or family warrant a mental health referral where it might necessitate medication. It might not be an exceptional experience, or it may be an overload that the person can't handle it. This is another example about, what this child sees. She's normal by all accounts, does well in school, friends, mentally and physically healthy, but she reports that she sees the same 5 adults every day at school. She's very descriptive about what she sees. They're dressed in period clothing, some back to the 1930s. And then even while she's at a local discount store, she sees people with a spirit walking directly behind them and feels that this spirit knows the person and who they're following, and it's never evil or a bad feeling. So some of this teens' experiences may have been picking up impressions from past events that occurred in the school, but it could also be, as she's seeing, spirits that are with people. So 15% border on possibly psychosis or psychotic events. This is, a 7-year-old who's been stating that he sees a face with 5 horns or spikes on the top of the head, crooked mouth, sharp teeth, wide eyes, scar on the side of the face. Another's a dark figure with half the face covered in long dark hair and eyes closed. They don't talk, they don't make sounds. And could this be psychotic? Could this be an alarm of, needing some mental health work and experience rather than a phenomena that's an actual exceptional experience? So some studies have been done in Durham and Stanford with a range of diagnoses, and with some people that have no diagnoses, that the voices they were hearing were indistinguishable from hearing somebody in the room. Some were thought-like, some were a mixture of the two, of being external. There was no link between reported diagnosis and the quality of voices heard. 2/3 reported that they actually had physiological changes when they heard the voices, tingling in their extremities, shock sensations, intense pressure in the head, warmth, agitation, detached from their body. 30 to 50% of the Western countries found exceptional experiences were not rare, but abundant and higher in other cultural contexts. In Germany, in one study, almost 1,500 participants, 32% experienced some kind of sensory impressions when they had apparitions that they were feeling in contact with. But what about the experiencer? What are they going through? How's that for them? Well, a lot of times after having an exceptional experience, they feel different than other children. They're teased, they're bullied, they're called out in front of other children. They tend to spend time alone or with other adults rather than enjoying their childhood. They feel older than their age. They may have sensitivities to the world around them, or they are introspective. They use art and other means to express themselves, may have difficulty with school work and concentrating. and they may act out even and become angry for no apparent reason, possibly because of the negative responses that they get. But a good majority don't have any significant psychological distress. They're rather confused or overwhelmed with the amount of contact that they have. They don't find those experiences impair their relationships or activities, and actually can help with self-integration and helping others. But as I said before, a lot of children don't like the dark. They're afraid to go to sleep. They see more spirits at that time. It may intrude during their school day. Here's a reaction of one of the experiencers. Okay, you awake one morning from a vivid dream. You tell your best friend that you felt her as much a part of the dream as you feel standing there, telling her about it. 3 days later, the dream actually happens, and your friend tells everyone. Suddenly, all of your chums are giving you odd stares, some only partially joking, make finger cross signs to ward you off. 2 or 3 cite biblical insights into how witches should be treated. A few ask you to join their coven, but black is not a color you personally find fetching. You feel alone and isolated in utter confusion. Alison Dubois, who was the medium in the TV show called Medium, she was the main character, and it was based on her life and book Don't Kiss Them Goodbye, stating at age 6, after a funeral for her great-grandfather, she was awakened from sleep by a presence, and it was filled, the room was filled with a soft glow, and she wasn't scared but was on edge. Great-grandpa Johnson stood at the foot of my bed and said, "I am okay. I'm still with you. Tell your mom there's no more pain." And great-grandpa lingered for only a moment after giving the message, and he was gone. And she worried and thought about, should she tell her mom? And the mom sort of said, "Oh, of course, I believe you," and walked away. And she could sense that the mother really didn't. And she felt misunderstood, even though she understood that, her mom was trying to be supportive. She started on a journey of denial and confusion and decided to keep these imaginative moments to herself. And sometimes she thought, quote, "I thought I was hallucinating. I could see faded human figures standing next to people. Colorful personal information about strangers popped into my head and ran from beginning to end like a movie. I convinced myself that my mind was bored and was creating visions, but I was tired of visual congestion. I was overloaded by the other side, and I didn't even know it." So these kids need help in how to deal with this stuff, and many keep it to themselves. Irene Blisting did a dissertation on the impact and lifelong effect of children's EXs, and found that most were from 2 to 13 years of age when they occurred. 6.8 years was the mean. But they saw apparitions of Jesus and Virgin Mary, Abraham, Moses, Saint Teresa. About 61% disclosed, and only 3 of the 23 had a positive reaction from the disclosure. 75% had negative reactions, and 26% kept it secret until adulthood. And their responses were, "When I was a child, people thought I was crazy, and I learned to be quiet to avoid ridicule. When I was older, they said I was evil." Or, "I know I mentioned it to my parents who didn't really listen. Later on, I was able to tell an aunt, and she listened, and it was good to have someone believe me." Ashley also saying how, she could see and hear and physically feel ghosts and spirits, and the parents didn't believe me or pretend it's not happening, but it is. As a young child, I saw them everywhere, but as I got older, I started seeing less until they were gone for a while. In recent years, I started seeing them again, and they've become more visible and physical with me. I don't know what to do anymore. I've never been scared or ashamed of what I see, but I can't control this anymore. So it's very important to have someone who understands, who validates, who listens, who believes, who knows that this stuff can be real. It is real. Katie, who was a teen, responded to me how The darkness in my life has left me, and I feel that you were the one that helped make it leave. I want to thank you for all your help. You've really helped change my life around. Over these past few months, I've helped many people with their grieving process and given them reasons to keep going. It makes it easier to know someone out there really cares for confused kids just like me. I've been thinking about it, and I want to do what you do, help kids in need of answers. You've made an impact on my life that I'm very thankful for. Or Zena, it just feels good to know there are others that understand. I feel that I have more gifts, which I know I have been blocking as it scares me. I so appreciate you getting back to me. I don't think you understand. I cannot even express how much this meant to me, how much I needed it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we need to be there. And as clinicians moving into this realm, we need to be able to open the door in therapy. We need to be able to invite, make it invitational to our clients that they can share their exceptional experiences and have materials that are going to help bring that out and say that I'm here, I'm willing to listen, I believe you. Having like an angel puppet or a wizard, having religious figures, which you can get from party stores, having things that represent death, getting them from Halloween times, caskets and crosses and religious things, tombstones, the Day of the Dead symbols, skeletons and skulls that the child can utilize in the play and talk about and share their experiences through it. Be aware of some alternative communications as they play out a scene of death or a funeral, exploring that these experiences may be there in terms around a death of a relative or imaginary playmates. One child in therapy with me did the sand tray, and I explored for the child to tell me more about it, where you clearly can see a skeleton behind the plant, what looks like tombstones being set up. And the child talked about watchers and that there are spirits that are out there. And I was able to explore more about this child seeing the spirit of a grandparent before he would fall asleep. So being able to track the play, respond in a way that's invitational too. Oh, there's special power in the sand, or these people need special protection. I wonder what the watchers do when they see what's happening, or tell me more about the watchers, using their terms. Another scenario child set up with religious figures and a funeral scene, also elicited by just responding empathically to wondering what they saw, wondering about the spirits of the dead, and the child's belief was able to say that they also were able to see a grandparent that had recently died, and the father was able to validate the child's mentioning that and working with the child to understand their experiences and validating them. Again, another scenario where the child spontaneously is creating a scene that's going to help me elicit more from them about their exceptional experiences. This mom reporting about imaginary friends. The imaginary friend's name is John, and he died 2 years before my son was born. I had pictures of John, and I said one time to my son, he would have loved you. And my kids said, oh, he does, and he misses you. I cried in the closet. Another parent reporting their 4-year-old having an imaginary friend called Sydney, and the child saying, Mommy, could I have a blanket? Sydney is always cold. Of course, the mother says. Why do you think he's cold? And the child replied, he's dead. And she never slept again from that. And one of her daughter's best friends is a dead girl named Hallie that she hangs out at her daycare and hits her when she says bad words like stupid. So these imaginary friends, invisible friends, and of course in play, and in therapy may come out, that we need to be respectful of and responsive to as being real experiences for these kids. During intake, talk about with the family, do they have a religious faith? Is it an important part of their daily life? Become culturally competent. Various religions and cultures view spiritual contact and psychic abilities as positive and may put the person in high esteem. But there may be negative religious views. Fundamentalist Christians may feel there's an association with the devil. One parent brought the child into a lab for some research Taylor reports and a Bible to the lab, and said she was praying every day for the devil to leave her child, explaining that if a child said an imaginary being was forcing him or her to do unwanted things, Taylor felt at that point, then the child should get some psychological assistance. But you can get very strong religious views and cultural views where imaginary friends are evil forces and associated with the devil. Mennonites discourage children from fantasy play that's not directly related to a role as a farmer or a father or mother. So some of the things we can do as clinicians is explore your own spirituality, your own beliefs. Consider how open you are to the events that children are coming into the therapy room and maybe sharing, reading up on imaginary playmates, exceptional experiences, getting consultation, supervision, contacting me for assistance or to check on how to respond. I had an email just yesterday, serendipitously, synchronicity-wise, saying that a child came into therapy and was sharing her thoughts about something that the therapist had just been thinking about. Could that be telepathy? Consider alternatives. It might not be psychosis or schizophrenia or need medication or hospitalization. Be there and listen, treating them with the same ethical behavior and care that and professionalism that you would with anyone else, creating that trusting environment and keeping our assumptions and judgments, preconceptions. Don't assume it is psychic. Don't assume it might not be in an emotional disturbance too. Don't lean either way. Try to be neutral and hearing it, really being there and carefully listening. Helping that child also or teen using alternative therapeutic tools, mindfulness, meditation, journaling, collage, music, guided imagery, sand tray to express and share some of their abilities, to enhance their abilities, tune into things. For parents, you want to encourage them to listen without judgment, create an accepting environment so the child will share their experiences, whether you believe them having happened or not. You want the child to be able to come and share everything. Make casual comments. Oh, you picked up what I was thinking, or isn't that interesting? Or tell me about your dream, or you're able to see things that most people can't. Tell me more, rather than pushing it aside. Normalize it. Let them know other children and adults had similar exceptional experiences, that research has been conducted, that there are books available, including The Gift, ESP, The Extraordinary Experiences of Ordinary People, that Sally Ryan Feather and Michael Schmecker have written in the past. Don't encourage performance by the child and having them show off their psychic abilities to others and at whim. Put them in perspective. The child may be gifted and talented with psychic abilities, but they have other things to learn, other talents to develop, and let them be a child. But keep communication open, whether you believe it or not. Be open to letting them share the experiences. Let them keep a journal, or you keep a journal as a parent. And here are some references that are available. This American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences has a wonderful cultural competency guideline for working with clients who report experiences, exceptional experiences. So this is a very good guideline to utilize if you are a clinician through this organization. And please feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns that you may run into with kids, or any research you're doing, if I can be part of it or help in any way. Any questions that you might have from this presentation. The website perceptivechildren.org also has information available. Feel free to utilize that and refer others to it. I hope you found this very helpful. It's a lot to take in. It's a bit lengthy, but I think you have a lot of good material to help you as a clinician and as a researcher. Hopefully we'll see more research with children.
Yes, right, exactly. Oh, well, this is really wonderful. So thank you so much. And I mean, you've got so much information here. This is something that I'm definitely going to make sure that everybody knows. This is the one for the number of clinicians that signed up for the course. And I am also going to send it to Peter Johnson at the Society for Psychical Research and talk you up because he does do, they do have webinars where they'll bring in people from other countries and do it on Zoom. Because I think this really dovetails with a lot of what's going on in the UK, especially.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
The more we can get it out there, the more people can validate kids and think of them also as a good resource of spontaneous cases and exceptional cases, the better.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's very important. Well, since it's almost 5 o'clock, I just want to say thank you to everybody who was here and disappeared, and everybody who's going to be watching the recording. And to let you guys know, those of you who have registered for parapsychology, ParaMOOC, we'll be getting another little newsletter with the things that are coming up. On Sunday at noon Central, we have our Zoom discussion forum, and we'll be talking about all of the things that we learned this week. At 2 p.m. on that same Sunday, those of you who are adventurous and want to come join us in the virtual world Second Life may join us at the Desire Library and Learning Center. And I, honest to God, am going to get the tutorial up there so that you know how to get in there and get a free thing. And then on Monday, the 22nd, we have Kate Adams at, it says in the website, it says 4 a.m., but she, luckily for us, had her afternoon open up. So she will be at 7 a.m. Central, 8 p.m., 8 a.m. Eastern, and that's 1 p.m. in London. On Wednesday, we'll have Talia Lavin talking about anomalous experiences in childhood, the implication for therapists. Kate is talking about dreams mainly, visions in the night, children's extraordinary dreams. And then Sally Drucker is Thursday at 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. Children's Sign, What the Research Tells Us. And then our final presentation is Jim Matlock on Saturday, the 27th, an introduction to research on children's memories of previous lives and why past life memory isn't psi. And then we have a final discussion on the 28th at noon and a dance in Second Life at 2 p.m. To close down the course. So I hope everybody will bookmark things and come along and see stuff. And if you're watching the recording here, be sure you get in touch with us and come to the website. You don't have to be registered for anything to come to the website and see what the extra materials are and so on. Well, thank you again, Athena. I really appreciated what you did here. It was very, very exhaustive and very very interesting because of the way that you handled that, you know, bringing the case collections and how they have changed over time, and then that very important part for therapists and clinicians as to how do you handle this and how do the parents handle this and what can you do to provide that kind of support. So I think that's all very important.
Thank you. Thanks, Nan. Good seeing you. Wonderful conference. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was great. It was great seeing you too. We got to do this more often. So I'll see if
That's
if
true.
we can't come up with something. Brian, keep that in mind for a future. Bye bye now.
Bye-bye.